Kind of keeping on the theme of sort of big data sets and whatnot, our next speaker is Cynthia Powell, who is the Executive Director of Calflora. We've seen lots of Calflora maps in the various presentations throughout the last 2 days. Cynthia graduated from San Francisco State University with an MS in GIS, and her thesis involved forecasting the Mokelumne River water supply based on MODIS, remote sensing snowpack images. She's been examining what's under that snow, namely plants, ever since, and Cynthia really coordinates all aspects of Calflora programs, including research, outreach, advocacy, as well as fundraising and management. So here's Cynthia to tell us all about Calflora.
Thank you, Russ, and thanks for being here, all of you, in the final session. As Russ mentioned, I have my MS in GIS, which stands for Geographic Information Science. And this is the good news session and why Calflora is such good news. There's a lot of reasons. Here are just a few. Data, or all the records in Calflora, are aggregated from many sources. We cross-reference old and new plant names. As you know, plant names change, for better or for worse. It's hard to remember all the changes. And if you're looking at an old name or a new name, you can find it in Calflora either way. We track soil and climate tolerances for all the records in Calflora based on soil and climate data. Potential plant habitats are also provided. Pollinator information, you can create history stacks showing change over time in the Calflora database. And all of this information is vital for people who are amateur botanists, professional botanists, researchers, climate scientists, you. I want a little shout out. We have some Calflora board members in the audience. Julie, could you put up your hand, please? I know you're shy. There you are, there you are. Oh, good, there you guys are. Yay, Julie! This photo and this record in Calflora for this manzanita was taken by Julie, and she has tons and tons and tons of data in the Calflora database. And one of these blue dots, let's see if I can get this to work. Oops. It's this one. Okay, so one of these blue dots, if you clicked on it, if we were on the Calflora website and you clicked on it, it would say Julie Kierstead and have this beautiful photo. So Calflora staff combine or aggregate, or what's another word? There's lots of words. Combine, aggregate, put together, culminate plant records from many sources to provide a more complete distribution picture. One source is iNaturalist, another is Consortium of California Herbaria, or CCH. All of you in the audience, you probably know some of the sources that Calflora data come from. Can you just shout those out? Okay, Bryophyte, I heard. Aaron, what did you say? CNPS Rare Plant Inventory? Fred Hersha checklists? Our own data. David Magny has his data in there. Julie Mona, a lot of you have your own data. Friends of Saucil Creek. INAT, did I hear an INAT over here? INAT. We do have a filter, so not all INAT data comes into Calflora. We filter out not research grade. We have it's an algorithm, it's a computer, it's not a person, but we do filter out some. Any other sources you can think of you want to shout out? Herbarium, thank you. What did this? Vegetation data from CNPS, yes. Good. Yep. Yeah. David Pop is a prolific user of the Calflora data collection app, and he has tens of thousands, so many records in Calflora. So thanks to all these different sources, state parks, national forests, all these local data sources all put together, each state has its own distribution map, and all those blue dots come from lots of different places. And that's 8,500 distribution maps that are available via the Calflora website. Such good news. Here is Mona, raise your hand. Another Calflora board member. This is a diplicus used to be a mimulus. These names are tricky and they change. So one of these blue dots on the map is from Mona's record here, and it's associated with her photo. And the Calflora database, or Calflora, either, it's the same thing, cross-references alternate names. We used to call them synonyms, but it's not always a one-to-one relationship. There's the lumpers, there's the splitters, there's the DNA people who are realizing, oh, no, it's a whole different family, hold on. So whatever name you learned, and you can't just like keep it in your head what the new name is, the USDA plants, all the name changes are documented in Calflora, also from the Jepson eFlora, of which last year there was over 100 changes. iNaturalist, that's new, so we now have cross-referencing names that iNaturalist uses. We also cross-reference Plants of the World Online, Royal Botanic Gardens Q, and the CNPS Rare Plant Inventory. So pretty much that, I think we're covering all our bases. So whatever name you might be thinking of or learned it by or like you heard about recently, you can find it in Calflora. Recently, thanks to Nancy Moran, we learned about these 3 name changes. Gorgeous photos. Here it is. So Adam Chase C, David Greenberger, Jordan Collins. Actually, 2 of you are in the audience. Can you wave your hand around David Greenberger? Get some credit for your photo. I know you're shy. And Chasey, I don't think is here, is he? Oh, raise your hand. You're here. That's great. And what about Jordan Collins was here earlier? Yay! Thank you. Really great photos, and they help us describe what's going on with these name changes. So we are informed from various, sometimes an email with some research attached, sometimes we go, the Jepson eFlora, sometimes, we hear about all these name changes and we document them all in Calflora. Yes, it is a lot of work. We have a taxonomic expert. We are not the taxonomy authority, nor do we want to be, but we reflect all these changes. So these are 3 recent ones. In addition to this aggregated data and cross-referencing of plant names, we also track tolerances for every plant. So 8,500 wild plants in the state of California, and they each have soil and climate tolerances describing what works for them, where can they grow. So for instance, for the fetid adder's tongue, and Marianne Maki is I don't think she's here, but she's a great volunteer at Calflora. The elevation tolerances, 10 to 920 meters. I don't need to go through all these, but precipitation, wet season, temperature range, December low, July high, accumulated temperature, soil pH, calcium carbonate, all of these tolerances are listed. And from these tolerances, we generate maps like this showing potential habitat for every species. Of course, for the invasive species, yeah, they are sometimes expanding quite a bit, and that's not such good news. But we don't need to talk about that now, right now in the good news session. We like it when the potential habitat for some of our favorite plants is established and expanding, and these are available from the Calflora website if you'd like to use them. And this is brand new, hot off the press. Pollinator information is now on Calflora. So there's over 1,500 plant species in California associated with beneficial organisms, such as pollinators. And now, as of a month ago, you can use Calflora to find out which plant species are associated with which pollinators. And that's really exciting. And I should have credited those photos. The one on, let's see, Ron Vanderhoff is not here. I know that's his photo. Does anybody recognize this as their photo? Was that a yes? Oh, okay. I was like, wow, okay, what's your name? So pollinator information is now on Calflora. And that's another useful for researchers, we heard a lot of presentations today about pollinators, and having that there is just another valuable way to kind of have all this information in one place at your fingertips to look up and find. History stacks, I sometimes include a picture of pancakes with this slide, showing the 2013 record pancake was, 3 acres of our, Oakland Mariposa lily. And then in 2020, maybe the habitat shrank, so we have a smaller pancake in 2020 compared to 2013. And then if the habitat got even smaller, or maybe hopefully grew, in 2025, we wouldn't know about it yet. Let's say 2024, when it was blooming in the spring, we saw that it grew again, that area where it is growing, and people are logging it, taking photos, using iNaturalist, using the Calflora app, all these agencies, state, federal, local agencies, putting data into Calflora. That way you can see, are our populations changing? Are they getting bigger? For invasive plants, that's also really useful to know if you're treating it, if you're hand pulling, mechanical goats, whatever you're doing, is it working? Did you get the right season, the right phenology for when you're doing the work? So that's a great way to use history stacks in Calflora, and you can even, as of last year, stack using observations coming in from iNaturalist. So for a long time, you couldn't create a history stack using iNat observations, but now you can have Calflora, iNat, state parks, Calflora, iNat, and lots of different sources showing that change over time. Okay, so current information for amateur and professional botanists, researchers, climate scientists, and you. Without Calflora, this valuable and widely available information would not be available. Other states do not have a resource like Calflora yet. Every now and again, we get kind of a question like, why doesn't this exist in Wisconsin? We'd love this in North Carolina. And we're open to answer questions and help people establish something similar in other states, but doesn't exist yet. Our 2 board members were a little shy. And they didn't want to come up here and say something. But if you want, so they are amazing. Our board is great, supportive, dedicated, smart. I mentioned my MS is in GIS, and they are real deal botanists, as are many of you in the audience. And of course, we need that expertise on our board. And we couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much. And if you want, yay, Mona Julie, yay! And if you want to ask them more about Calflora, why they support Calflora with their time, with their money, with their brain power, they're here and really love talking to people, just not up on stage. They told me. Okay, so let's go over this. Why Calflora is such good news. Aggregated data from so many sources. You guys listed them. Cross-referencing old and new plant names, soil and climate tolerances, potential plant habitats, pollinator info, history stacks. Staff and board dedicated, responsive, smart, passionate, compassionate people to boot. So that is such good news. And now we have a few minutes for questions. Yes.
Is there going to be an impact to Calflora with potential cutbacks in federal funding?
Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. Calflora is a 501c3 independent nonprofit supported by your donations, mostly. So the federal, yes, our budget will be somewhat affected by the budget cuts that are upcoming because the feds are supporting also Calflora to some degree, but we're not a federal organization. We're a totally independent nonprofit, so not quite as much. Thanks for asking that. Other questions? Yes, purple shirt.
I just wanted to ask about the, suitable habitat maps and how they might be shifting with climate change.
That's a really good question. How would they be shifting with climate change? Well, warmer, wetter, warmer, drier. Oh yeah, you have something else to add.
I mean, what kind of data are going into these maps to make sure that they're keeping up, for restoration practitioners and things like that?
If you really want to see the full list of data that go into these maps, it's like 25 or 30 variables. It's really long. So if you look at a potential habitat map like this one on the Calflora website, at the top it says tools, and you can read all about it and how they were incorporated into the models. And we're using, so 2010, 2020, we're using 2020 data. We were using 2010 data, and we upgraded to 2020. So every 10 years is kind of like when we get a new batch. So they're pretty static in the, for the 10 years. And then we get new soil data from Surgo, new climate precipitation from PRISM. Of course, we'll get more observations. That's not true, they're not static. As the observations come in, they do change. But in terms of Surgo and precipitation and all that, they don't for that decade. Any other questions? Yeah.
I know it's not behind a paywall, but I think a lot of people could benefit to hear about the paid versions you have for consultants or people using it for other purposes, because I've been a consultant for almost a decade, used it, didn't know about that until about 3 years ago, because you don't really aggressively go after people.
I should
and
be
maybe
more
you
aggressive.
should.
You're right.
So could
You're
you
totally
say
right.
more about that?
Thanks for bringing that up. I should be more aggressive about the funding and the funding structure and how it all works and how you can support Calflora. As a director, that's my job. Okay, deep breath. So as I mentioned, about a third of our funding comes from not just like private personal donations, and that's vital. Another third of our funding comes from invasive plant software that we provide. Raise your hand if you use Weed Manager. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. So not that many of you. It's if you are working with invasive plants and you want to track where they are, what you're treating them with, if it's herbicide, if it's hand pulling, if it's goats, if it's whatever it is, we have a subscription for tracking treatment within Calflora. You can generate reports showing like how many acres you had of goat grass, how that changed when you used whatever treatment, and then submit that to your supervisors, your board, and say, we did a good thing, or we're actually not doing very well on this front. It's expanding, and because Calflora data is across jurisdictions, across borders, so state parks can easily talk to Mid-Penn, who can easily talk to county parks, and so as you share borders with all these other organizations, and you're sharing data in Calflora, whether you're using Weed Manager or not, then it's easy to see like what's working, what's not working. Let's talk, let's collaborate on how to deal with these invasive plants. So that's about a third, maybe a little bit, maybe 40% of our funding. And then environmental consultants who are using Calflora for their work, there's also a subscription for that. So that's another third-ish, maybe a little bit less of our funding model. And that's really important for that to, like, if you want to be able to export rare plant locations, to create your report that you're submitting, to be able to build whatever that is trying to be built. So that's kind of the information that's available. And so thanks for bringing that up. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. All these funding sources are very important, and thank you for being part of that and bringing that up. Yes, one last question.
Hey, Cynthia.
Yes.
I'm over here.
Oh, hi.
So I was wondering, with the potential habitat maps that you have, is there any way to actually do a search for a specific location for which species habitat ranges overlap that location?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So instead of saying so this is on a per species basis, and what you want to do is drill down on a location and see all the species for which that would be potential habitat.
Potentially, rare species. That might be helpful.
Yeah, so instead of seeing on a per species basis, you want to see all the species that could potentially grow there based on what we know about their tolerances, right? Is that the question? Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist right now. We have it as we have 8,500 of these maps. But that sounds really cool, and that's the kind of thing that we could build with financial support.
It seems like a really great searchable database for, especially for consultants trying to figure out which rare species might have potential to occur on a site.
Yeah.
We obviously have things
Right.
like the CNDDB and the CNPS inventory that are based on species that are known to occur within a certain area. But, you know, sometimes there's habitat that where a species hasn't necessarily been documented in the area. And so that kind of a database might be able to bring in those species.
That's a great idea. And since you brought up CNDDB, I want to point out that these blue dots, some of these blue dots are coming also from CNDDB. That's another source I don't think we threw out when we were talking about all the different data sources. Okay, thank you very much.